As the world mourns Pope Francis, history's most secretive transfer of power begins. White smoke, the path to a new pope, guides you through this momentous transition. We explain exactly what happens next, leading to the dramatic conclave vote. Learn how each ritual unfolds, what each tradition means, and why these ancient ceremonies still matter today. Follow along as the throne of St. Peter stands empty and a new chapter in church history begins. White Smoke, available wherever you get your podcasts.
Feeling overwhelmed by negative news? 5 Good News Stories is your daily dose of what's going right in the world. Like the 103-year-old granny who got caught speeding in her sports car because she was living life to the fullest, or the family who found their missing cat after 3 years when it showed up at their vacation rental. Remember Flop the penguin's incredible comeback after his injury? And that guy who broke the world record for most high fives in 24 hours while raising money for charity? These are the stories that remind us the world is still full of wonder and joy. 5 Good News Stories. Pure positivity 3 times a week. 5 Good News Stories, available wherever you get your podcasts. 5 Good News Stories.
Calaroga Shark Media.
My name is Daniel Marsh. Last time I told you how journalist Eliza Morgan uncovered financial connections between Franklin Webb's company and Russian interests, and overheard Webb discussing a test run of compromised targeting systems scheduled for the next day. How Lieutenant Wade and Specialist Chen found temporary sanctuary with a humanitarian doctor who helped them transmit critical intelligence back to American forces. And how National Security Advisor James Reynolds realized he was being set up as the fall guy and made a desperate move to save himself. This is Signal Lost, March 20th, 2025. Washington, D.C., 5:15 a.m. The FBI Tactical Operations Center had been active throughout the night, the fluorescent lights casting a harsh glow over agents and analysts working with focused intensity. Special Agent Thomas Carter stood before a digital display showing multiple operational feeds, surveillance positions, intelligence reports, and status updates from teams in the field. Webb left his residence 30 minutes ago, an agent reported, bringing up a satellite image of a vehicle moving along the George Washington Parkway. He's not heading to his office or any known associate locations. Carter nodded, unsurprised. The pieces were falling into place exactly as he had anticipated. He's running. Activate all surveillance teams. I want eyes on every possible exit route from the city. The raid on Webb's office the previous night had yielded critical evidence. Servers containing communications between Obsidian Security Solutions and entities linked to Russian intelligence. The financial trails Eliza Morgan had uncovered were now backed by concrete digital forensics confirming the conspiracy's international dimensions. But the most damning evidence had come from an unexpected source. James Reynolds had walked into FBI headquarters shortly before midnight, carrying an encrypted drive and a handwritten statement detailing his knowledge of Webb's activities. The National Security Advisor had made a deal, full cooperation in exchange for consideration during prosecution. Reynolds' information had confirmed their worst fears. The targeting system breach was real, sophisticated, and already partially implemented. A test run was scheduled for 0900 Eastern Time, less than 4 hours from now, involving a drone operation targeting suspected militant locations in eastern Syria. If the test succeeded, the conspirators would proceed to what they called Phase 3, systematic manipulation of targeting data across all Middle East operations, creating a pattern of failures and civilian casualties that would undermine confidence in American precision strike capabilities. Carter's phone rang, a secure line from the Pentagon. "We've implemented the countermeasures," the military liaison reported. "All targeting systems have been isolated from the compromised network. The drone operation will proceed using standalone verification protocols." "Any sign they've detected our intervention?" Carter asked. "Negative. As far as they can tell, everything is proceeding according to their timeline." It was a calculated risk. By allowing the operation to appear normal while secretly implementing backup systems, they hoped to identify exactly how and where the infiltration had occurred. The drone would receive both the compromised targeting data and the verified coordinates, allowing analysts to document precisely how the data had been manipulated. But success depended on capturing those responsible before they realized their scheme had been discovered. Webb was the key, not necessarily the mastermind, but the crucial link between foreign interests and American systems. Without him, they couldn't be certain they'd identified all potential compromise vectors. "Sir," an analyst called, urgency in her voice, "we've got a hit on Eliza Morgan's location. Her phone just activated near National Airport." Carter felt his pulse quicken. Morgan had disappeared the previous night after attempting to contact her editor. Her last communication had contained critical intelligence about Webb's meeting with Dmitry Voronin and the planned test run. Then she had vanished, presumably taken by Webb's security team. "Is she moving?" Carter asked. "Yes, heading toward the terminal. Vehicle signature consistent with Webb's secondary convoy." Carter made an immediate decision. "Divert tactical team 2 to the airport. Alert airport security, but tell them to maintain distance. We need eyes only until our people are in position." If Morgan was being taken to the airport, it suggested Webb was planning to leave the country, possibly with her as leverage or insurance. The journalist had become a liability to the conspiracy, but also potentially valuable as a hostage if things went wrong. The operation was accelerating toward its climax, multiple elements converging as dawn broke over the capital. In Yemen, Lieutenant Marcus Wade and Specialist Chen had been moving through the pre-dawn darkness for hours, navigating toward the extraction coordinates with the aid of the satellite phone provided by Dr. Lindqvist. Their injuries slowed their progress, but desperation and training kept them moving despite the pain. The extraction point was a flat area approximately 10 kilometers outside Sana'a, open enough for a helicopter landing but with sufficient topographical features to provide cover during approach and withdrawal. According to the encrypted messages they'd received, a special operations team was already in country, moving to secure the location before the extraction helicopter arrived. "How much farther?" Chen asked. Her breathing labored as they paused behind an abandoned structure to check their position. Wade consulted the satellite phone's GPS function. 2 kilometers. We need to maintain pace to reach the site before full daylight." Both understood the calculus of their situation. Movement after dawn would exponentially increase their risk of detection. But the extraction team wouldn't wait indefinitely. The political and military risks of the operation demanded a strict timeline. As they prepared to continue, the satellite phone vibrated with an incoming message. "Extraction window modified. Hostiles moving toward your position from southwest. Proceed with caution." Wade checked their map, identifying the new threat. Their pursuers had somehow anticipated their extraction plan or detected their communications. The route they had been following was now compromised. "We need to adjust," he told Chen, indicating an alternative approach that would take them through more difficult terrain but potentially avoid the hostile forces. "It's going to be rough." Chen nodded, determination overriding exhaustion in her eyes. "Lead the way, Lieutenant." They moved out, abandoning their planned route for a more circuitous path that would demand everything remaining of their strength and endurance. The extraction window was closing, hostile forces were converging, and the intelligence they carried remained vital to national security. Failure was not an option, no matter the physical cost. At Ronald Reagan National Airport, Eliza Morgan sat in the back of a black SUV, her wrists zip-tied behind her, a security professional on either side of her. Through the vehicle's tinted windows, she could see the private aviation terminal where a Gulfstream jet waited on the tarmac, its engines already running. Her abduction the previous night had been professionally executed, intercepted leaving the Roosevelt Hotel, sedated with a precisely administered injection, transported to a secure location where she had been held until less than an hour ago. No unnecessary violence, no threats, just clinical efficiency that spoke to the resources and training of those involved. Webb sat in the front passenger seat, speaking quietly into a secure phone. His demeanor betrayed no panic or urgency, just the focused attention of an executive managing a complex logistical operation. Nothing in his bearing suggested he was orchestrating treason on an unprecedented scale. When he finished his call, he turned to face Eliza, his expression almost apologetic. "I want you to understand that this isn't personal, Ms. Morgan. You're a superb journalist who simply discovered more than was safe for you to know." "Where are you taking me?" Eliza asked, her voice steady despite her situation. "Somewhere secure, until certain operations are completed. After that, your status will depend on developments beyond my control." Webb's candor was somehow more disturbing than threats would have been. "I've made arrangements for your reasonable comfort during this transitional period." "You mean, until your test run confirms you've successfully compromised America's targeting systems?" Webb's eyebrow raised slightly. "You were listening quite attentively at the Roosevelt. Yes, that's essentially correct, though your understanding of the technical aspects is necessarily limited." "I understand enough," Eliza countered. "You've sold out your country for money, helped foreign powers infiltrate military systems that will get innocent people killed when targeting data is manipulated." Something flickered across Webb's face. Not guilt exactly, but perhaps irritation at the simplicity of her characterization. "This isn't about money, Ms. Morgan. It's about equilibrium. For decades, America has maintained uncontested dominance in precision warfare capabilities. That dominance has created dangerous asymmetries in global security dynamics." His tone was that of a professor explaining a complex concept to a promising but naive student. "What we've facilitated isn't destruction, but balance, introducing just enough uncertainty to restore caution to military decision-making." "And the soldiers who died in Yemen, the ones still being hunted, were they just collateral damage in your quest for balance?" Webb sighed. "In any significant recalibration of power, there are costs. I regret those losses, but they're minuscule compared to what unchecked American military dominance has produced across the globe." Their conversation was interrupted as the SUV approached the private terminal security checkpoint. Webb adjusted his tie and gave instructions to the security team. "We proceed as planned. Ms. Morgan accompanies us aboard as a consultant. Any interference, we implement Contingency 3. Eliza had no illusion about what Contingency 3 might entail, but she also recognized her value as a hostage. Webb wouldn't dispose of her unless absolutely necessary, not when she represented potential leverage. As the SUV slowed at the checkpoint, Eliza noticed unusual activity. Airport security personnel speaking urgently into radios, additional staff appearing at strategic points around the terminal. Something was happening. Someone had identified Webb's escape attempt. Her hypothesis was confirmed moments later when the driver suddenly accelerated, bypassing the checkpoint entirely and speeding directly toward the waiting aircraft. Through the windows, she could see security personnel scrambling in response, and in the distance, black tactical vehicles converging on the terminal. "They're onto us," the driver reported tensely. "FBI tactical teams approaching from north and east entrances." Webb remained remarkably calm. "Proceed to the aircraft. We'll be airborne before they can establish a proper perimeter." But as their SUV approached the Gulf Stream, a new development unfolded. The aircraft's door remained closed, its crew visibly arguing with ground personnel who had positioned vehicles to block its taxi path. "The plane's been grounded," Eliza said, unable to keep a note of satisfaction from her voice. "Looks like your escape route just closed." Webb's practiced composure finally cracked, frustration flashing across his features before control reasserted itself. "Divert to secondary extraction," he ordered the driver. "Waterfront route." The SUV swerved away from the aircraft, accelerating toward a service road that ran along the perimeter of the airfield. In the side mirror, Eliza could see the tactical vehicles adjusting course to pursue, but they had been positioned to contain the aircraft, not intercept a vehicle departing by a secondary route. Webb had planned for this contingency. Of course he had. A man who orchestrated something as complex as the targeting system infiltration would have multiple escape options prepared. But so had the FBI. As the SUV rounded a corner onto the service road, it encountered a perfectly positioned roadblock. Two armored vehicles creating a V-shaped barrier, tactical officers in position with weapons trained on their approach. The driver slammed on the brakes, the SUV skidding to a halt less than 50 yards from the blockade. "Reverse," Webb ordered. But before the driver could comply, additional vehicles appeared behind them, completing the trap. They were boxed in, with no viable escape route remaining. For several tense seconds, no one moved. Then Webb made his final calculation. "Surrender protocol," he said quietly. "No resistance. No martyrs." The security professionals acknowledged the order with practiced neutrality, immediately placing their weapons on the dashboard and raising their hands. Webb himself sat perfectly still, hands visible on his knees, his expression one of resigned acceptance. It was over. Not with a desperate gunfight, but with the calm capitulation of a chess player who recognizes checkmate and sees no value in prolonging an unwinnable game. As FBI tactical officers approached the vehicle, weapons ready but no shots fired, Eliza felt the tension of the past days begin to drain away. Webb and his immediate operatives were in custody. The targeting system test would fail. The conspiracy had been exposed. But even as relief washed over her, Eliza recognized that this was not a complete victory. Webb was one node in a complex international network. His Russian collaborator, Voronin, was likely already out of the country. The foreign intelligence services that had designed the infiltration remained active, and the vulnerabilities in American systems that had made the breach possible still existed, even if this specific exploit had been neutralized. The game wasn't over. It had merely changed phases.
You can get this podcast completely ad-free right now. If you're on Apple, just click the banner that says Uninterrupted Listening, and you'll get your first month free. If you use Spotify or other podcast players, go to calaroga.com/plus. It's just $5 a month, and you'll get access to over 20 premium shows with no interruptions. Binge listen to new series like the political thriller Acting President, Signal Lost, where military secrets land on the wrong phone, and Pager Protocol, the thriller about exploding pagers in the wrong hands. Plus, enjoy daily shows like Palace Intrigue about the royal family, daily comedy news, and 5 daily trivia questions to test your knowledge, and White Smoke, taking you behind the scenes at what's happening right now at the Vatican. You also get all our hot shows like 5 Good News Stories. Enjoy your favorite content without any ad breaks. Remember, Apple users click the Uninterrupted Listening banner for your free first month, and everyone else head to calaroga.com/plus. Get ad-free listening today.
In a world of smartphones and quantum computing, the fate of nations rests on technology from the past. Calaroga Shark Media presents a new podcast, Pager Protocol, a 10-part espionage thriller that will change the way audiences see the world. As an unusually large shipment of pagers makes its way to a volatile region, CIA analyst Sarah Miller grows suspicious. Meanwhile, in Zion City, Nexus Director Amos Ben David sets a daring plan in motion. Agent Eli Cohen is tasked with a mission that could determine the fate of his nation and reshape the entire region. Pager Protocol is available now wherever you get your podcasts.
At the extraction point in Yemen, the first rays of dawn were breaking over the horizon as Wade and Chen reached the designated coordinates. They had pushed themselves beyond exhaustion, beyond pain, beyond what they had believed themselves capable of enduring. But they had arrived, bloodied, barely standing, but alive and present at the critical moment. The area appeared deserted, a flat expanse of terrain with scattered rock formations providing minimal cover. No sign of the extraction team, no indication of the promised security elements. "Could we be early?" Chen asked, scanning the horizon with professional wariness. Wade checked the satellite phone. No, they should be here. A foreboding silence settled over them. After everything they had endured, the ambush, capture, escape, and desperate flight across hostile territory, to find the extraction point empty felt like a final cruel twist of fate. Then Wade's trained ear caught a sound, the faint but distinctive whop 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 of helicopter rotors in the distance, approaching fast but still beyond visual range. "Take cover," he ordered, guiding Chen to a nearby rock formation that offered concealment, while maintaining sight lines to the open area where the helicopter would likely land. The sound grew louder, and then the aircraft appeared, a Black Hawk helicopter moving at maximum speed, flying dangerously low to avoid detection by air defense systems. It made a direct approach to the extraction point, but instead of landing immediately, it circled once, its crew obviously scanning for threats or signs of ambush. Wade activated a small infrared strobe they had received from Dr. Lindqvist, a universal signal to American forces that friendlies were present. The helicopter immediately adjusted its approach, coming in for a rapid landing in the center of the clear area. As its skids touched down, the side doors slid open to reveal a special operations team in full combat gear, the extraction force that had been promised. 2 operators jumped out, establishing a security perimeter while scanning for the strobe signal. Wade and Chen emerged from cover, moving as quickly as their injuries permitted toward the waiting aircraft. One of the operators spotted them and immediately moved to assist, recognizing their condition and providing support as they covered the final distance. "Lieutenant Wade, Specialist Chen," the operator confirmed as they reached the helicopter. "Affirmative," Wade responded, helping Chen climb aboard. "Just us." Captain Santiago didn't make it out. The operator nodded grimly, assisting Wade into the aircraft before returning to his security position. The pilot kept the rotors at operational speed, ready for immediate departure once the team was secure. 30 seconds, the crew chief announced over the internal communication system. "Hostile forces approaching from multiple vectors." Through the open door, Wade could see dust clouds on the horizon, vehicles moving at high speed toward their position. Whether they were the same forces that had held them captive or local militants was impossible to determine, but their intentions were clear. The extraction window was closing rapidly. The remaining operators returned to the helicopter, taking defensive positions as the aircraft began to lift off. In the distance, muzzle flashes indicated their pursuers had opened fire, though at this range the shots posed minimal danger to the rapidly ascending helicopter. As they gained altitude and speed, banking away from the approaching hostiles, Wade felt a weight lifting from his chest. They had made it. Against overwhelming odds, they had escaped with the critical intelligence that could prevent a devastating compromise of American military systems. But the cost had been high. 4 team members dead in the initial ambush. Captain Santiago almost certainly killed or recaptured during their escape. And even now, the physical toll of their ordeal was evident in Chen's labored breathing beside him, in the pain that radiated through his own body with each movement of the helicopter. Victory and loss, inextricably intertwined. The eternal paradox of their profession. A medic moved to attend their injuries, administering pain medication and checking their vital signs. Wade allowed the professional ministrations while his mind remained fixed on their unfinished mission. They were safe now, or soon would be, but the intelligence they carried still needed to reach the highest levels of command. "We need secure communications," he told the team leader. "Direct line to CENTCOM. This can't wait until we reach base." The operator nodded, fully grasping the urgency. "Secure comms available once we reach cruising altitude. 5 minutes." Wade leaned back, allowing himself a moment's respite while they climbed to safer airspace. 5 minutes until they could deliver their warning. He hoped it would be in time. In Washington, the Pentagon's sensitive compartmented information facility dedicated to drone operations was at maximum alert status. The planned operation in eastern Syria was proceeding, but with critical modifications implemented based on the intelligence received overnight. General Harriet Mitchell, Deputy Director for Operations, stood watching as her team executed the complex countermeasures designed to identify exactly how the targeting system had been compromised. Multiple redundant systems had been activated, each operating independently to verify targeting data and flight parameters. Drone approaching target area, the mission controller announced. All systems nominal. Initiate comparison protocol, Mitchell ordered. Show me what they're trying to feed us versus actual coordinates. A split screen appeared on the main display, showing two sets of targeting data. On the left, the verified coordinates for the militant compound that was the operation's legitimate target. On the right, the data flowing through the compromised system, coordinates that would have directed the strike nearly half a kilometer away into a residential neighborhood. Mitchell's jaw tightened. Record everything. Full forensic capture of the data manipulation. This is the evidence we need. As the drone continued its approach, the targeting systems registered the conflicting coordinates, but followed the verified data path as programmed. The weapon systems engaged, striking the militant compound with precision, while completely avoiding the civilian area that would have been hit if the compromise had gone undetected. Strike complete, the controller confirmed. Target neutralized. No collateral damage detected. Mitchell allowed herself a moment of grim satisfaction. They had prevented what would have been a devastating mistake, one designed to undermine confidence in American precision strike capabilities and potentially cause a significant strategic withdrawal from the region. Now we wait, she said, turning to the FBI liaison present for the operation. If they were monitoring, they'll know their test failed. How they respond will tell us whether we've contained the full extent of the breach. Back at FBI headquarters, Thomas Carter received the update from the Pentagon with cautious optimism. The targeting system compromise had been identified and countered successfully. Webb was in custody, along with his immediate security team. Morgan was safe, already providing a detailed statement about what she had overheard during Webb's meeting with Voronin. But crucial questions remained. How deep did the infiltration go? Were there additional access points they hadn't yet discovered? And most importantly, what was the current status of Captain Santiago, who represented the final piece of the authentication sequence the conspirators needed? Carter's phone rang, a secure line from the Joint Special Operations Command. Extraction successful, the caller reported without preamble. Lieutenant Wade and Specialist Chen recovered, en route to secure medical facility. Santiago's status remains unknown, presumed KIA or captured. What's their condition? Carter asked. Stable, but requiring significant medical attention, both conscious and able to communicate. They've provided preliminary intelligence confirming everything we suspected about the targeting system compromise. It was the best possible outcome given the circumstances. 2 of the 3 captured Americans rescued, carrying intelligence that would help secure military systems against further infiltration attempts. But Santiago's fate remained a critical concern, not just for humanitarian reasons, but because her biometric authentication, if successfully extracted, could still provide access to certain systems. Keep me updated on any new intelligence they provide, Carter instructed. Particularly anything regarding Santiago's last known status or location. After ending the call, Carter returned to the Tactical Operations Center, where analysts were processing the evidence seized from Webb's devices and Obsidian's servers. The financial trails were becoming clearer, shell companies leading back to Russian intelligence fronts, with indications of Chinese involvement as well. It was a textbook example of modern hybrid warfare, not a direct cyber attack that would constitute an overt act of aggression, but a sophisticated infiltration using human intelligence, compromised contractors, and carefully targeted system vulnerabilities to create persistent access that could be exploited over time. Sir, an analyst called, urgency in her voice. We've found something in Webb's encrypted communications. A facility in Yemen appears to be where the captured Americans were held. Recent messages indicate activity consistent with rapid evacuation. Carter moved to review the intelligence, recognizing its significance immediately. Notify JSOC. This could be our best lead on Santiago's current location. If the facility was being evacuated, It suggested the conspirators were cutting losses, destroying evidence, and potentially eliminating witnesses, including any remaining captives. Time was critical if there was any hope of finding Santiago alive. As these events unfolded across multiple continents, Meera Patel sat in the witness preparation room at the Senate Office Building, reviewing her notes before testifying before the Intelligence Committee. Her decision to come forward with evidence about the signal chat breach and Reynolds' subsequent obstruction had ended her government career, but potentially saved countless lives. An aide entered with a message. Franklin Webb had been arrested attempting to flee the country. The test run of the compromised targeting system had failed. 2 of the 3 captured soldiers had been successfully extracted from Yemen. Meera closed her eyes briefly, allowing relief to wash over her. Her actions had contributed to this outcome, not alone, but as part of a chain of individuals who had chosen country over career, truth over expediency, moral clarity over comfortable complicity. When she opened her eyes, she saw James Reynolds being escorted into the same waiting area, accompanied by FBI agents and his attorney. Their eyes met across the room. Former colleagues now on opposite sides of the most significant security breach in recent history. Reynolds looked diminished, the confident bearing of the National Security Advisor replaced by the slumped posture of a man confronting the consequences of his choices. His last-minute cooperation with the FBI had likely saved him from the most severe charges, but his career and reputation were destroyed beyond redemption. He nodded to her, a silent acknowledgement that she had been right all along. She returned the gesture, not with satisfaction or vindication, but with the solemn recognition that they had both been players in events whose full dimensions they were only beginning to understand. 6 hours later, as evening fell over Washington, Eliza Morgan sat in a secure FBI facility, finishing the most important article of her career. The piece would detail the full scope of the conspiracy, the targeting system compromise, Webb's role, the foreign connections, and the strategic implications of what had nearly occurred. The FBI had reviewed the article for sensitive information that might compromise ongoing operations, but had otherwise granted her remarkable latitude to tell the complete story. They recognized, as she did, that transparency was essential to restoring public confidence and ensuring accountability. As she wrote the final paragraphs, Eliza reflected on the chain of events that had begun with a simple notification on her phone, an accidental addition to a signal chat group discussing classified military operations. That seemingly minor security lapse had exposed a conspiracy of extraordinary sophistication and potentially devastating consequences. Her phone rang, her editor, calling with news that would reshape her conclusion. "They found Santiago," he told her, his voice tight with emotion. "Alive, but in critical condition. Special operations team extracted her from a convoy attempting to move her across the border into Saudi Arabia." Eliza's hands trembled as she absorbed this development. "When?" "Less than an hour ago. It's not public yet, but they're letting us break it alongside your main story. They want the full narrative out there." It was the final piece of the puzzle, not just for her article, but for her own sense of closure on these events. Captain Santiago had been the central target of the entire operation, the bearer of access credentials that represented the final key to compromising America's targeting systems. Her capture had been the conspirators' greatest success. Her rescue, their ultimate failure. "Send me what you have," Eliza said, already restructuring her conclusion to incorporate this development. "I'll integrate it and file within the hour." As she returned to her writing, Eliza found herself reflecting on the individual courage that had ultimately thwarted the conspiracy. Santiago's sacrifice to allow her team members to escape, Wade and Chen's determination to deliver critical intelligence despite their injuries, Meera's decision to come forward despite the professional consequences, even Reynolds' belated cooperation when confronted with the full implications of his actions. Large systems could be compromised. Sophisticated technologies could be infiltrated. But individual human beings, acting with moral clarity and physical courage, remained the ultimate defense against threats to national security and democratic values. That was the story she would tell. 3 weeks later, a small gathering assembled in a private room at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. Captain Santiago, still recovering from her injuries but now stable and alert, sat in a wheelchair as the Secretary of Defense presented her with the Distinguished Service Cross for extraordinary heroism in combat. Lieutenant Wade and Specialist Chen, themselves still healing but able to stand, received silver stars for their gallantry during escape and their crucial role in delivering intelligence that had prevented a catastrophic compromise of military systems. The ceremony was closed to the press, with only family members and a few senior officials present. The full story of Operation Sandstorm and its aftermath remained classified in its specific details, though the broader narrative had emerged through Eliza Morgan's reporting and carefully managed government disclosures. After the formal presentations, Santiago spoke privately with Wade and Chen, the first time all three had been together since their desperate escape attempt in Yemen. "The doctor who helped you," Santiago said, her voice still weak but gaining strength. "Lindqvist, they found her 2 days ago." Wade tensed, fearing the worst. "Alive?" Santiago nodded. "They came looking for her after you escaped, but she had already arranged transport to a Doctors Without Borders facility in Jordan. She's safe." It was one small mercy amid the broader tragedy of what had occurred. Dr. Lindqvist had risked everything to help American soldiers she didn't know, guided by her commitment to preventing the suffering that would result from compromised targeting systems. "And Webb?" Chen asked, the question all of them had been wondering. "Cooperating according to my briefings," Santiago replied. "Trading information for considerations in sentencing. The network behind him is still being mapped, but we've closed the vulnerability in our systems." What went unsaid was that new vulnerabilities would inevitably emerge, new adversaries would identify new attack vectors, and the endless cycle of security and compromise would continue. The nature of modern warfare demanded constant vigilance against threats that evolved as rapidly as the technologies they targeted. But for now, for this moment, they had won. 3 soldiers who had faced impossible odds had survived, had completed their mission, had prevented what could have been a devastating blow to American military capabilities and the strategic balance that depended on them. As the small gathering concluded and attendees began to disperse, Eliza Morgan waited respectfully near the exit. She had been invited not as a journalist, but as a participant in the events being recognized, someone whose actions had contributed to the outcome being celebrated. Santiago noticed her and gestured for her to approach. When she did, the captain extended her hand. "Thank you," Santiago said simply, "for getting the truth out, for making sure what happened wasn't buried or forgotten." Eliza took her hand, struck by the quiet strength still evident despite Santiago's injuries. "I just reported what happened. You and your team did the hard part." Santiago shook her head slightly. "Different battlefields, same war. Truth matters as much as targeting systems, maybe more." It was an insight that resonated deeply with Eliza's own understanding of her role as a journalist. In an era of hybrid warfare, where information operations were as strategically significant as kinetic actions, the pursuit and defense of truth was not separate from national security, but essential to it. 2 months later, on a warm spring evening, I met Eliza Morgan at a quiet bar in Georgetown, the same establishment where she had once monitored Franklin Webb's meeting with Dmitry Voronin. She had just returned from receiving the Pulitzer Prize for her reporting on the signal breach and its aftermath, a professional recognition that seemed almost secondary to the impact her work had achieved. "They're calling it a new model for national security journalism," I noted as we settled into a corner booth. "Aggressive reporting that exposed a conspiracy while working with authorities to prevent harm." Eliza smiled slightly, uncomfortable with the framing. "I just did my job, asked questions, followed leads. The circumstances were exceptional, not my methods." Her modesty was genuine, but incomplete. Her decisions throughout the crisis, when to publish, what to withhold, how to balance public interest against potential harm, had required extraordinary judgment under pressure. She had demonstrated that independent journalism and national security were not inherently adversarial, but could, in the right circumstances, serve complementary functions in a healthy democracy. "What about you?" she asked, changing the subject. "Your book on the whole affair is generating quite the buzz." I shrugged. Publishers love espionage with a technological angle, and having interviewed most of the key players gives me a perspective others don't have. What I didn't say was that the book represented my own attempt to make sense of events that had revealed deep vulnerabilities in American security systems. Not just technological, but human and institutional. The signal breach had exposed how individual decisions, organizational cultures, and systemic pressures could combine to create catastrophic security failures, even with the best intentions of those involved. "Have you spoken with Santiago recently?" I asked. Eliza nodded. "She's returning to active duty next month. Limited capacity initially, but she insisted on continuing her service." "And Webb?" "Still cooperating, according to my sources. The investigation has expanded to include technology firms with connections to Obsidian. Several executives have resigned or been placed on leave pending further inquiry." Webb's full cooperation had revealed a conspiracy more extensive than initially understood. A years-long operation by Russian intelligence with Chinese support to infiltrate American military systems through a combination of technical exploits and human compromise. His testimony had led to the identification of additional access points, the closure of vulnerabilities, and enhanced security protocols across multiple agencies. But the larger strategic challenge remained. America's technological superiority in precision warfare represented both a critical advantage and a tempting target for adversaries seeking asymmetric approaches to balancing power. The signal breach had been thwarted, but similar operations were almost certainly underway elsewhere, targeting different systems through different vectors. "Do you think we're safer now?" Eliza asked, the question cutting to the heart of what both of us had been contemplating. I considered my response carefully. The specific vulnerability has been addressed. New safeguards have been implemented. The individuals directly involved have been held accountable. But we're still dependent on systems that, by their nature, can never be completely secure, and on human beings who, despite their best intentions, will always have vulnerabilities of their own. Ambition, fear, greed, ideological conviction. Eliza nodded, understanding the inherent tension between technological capability and security that defined modern warfare and governance. "So we remain vigilant," she said. "We keep asking questions. We keep challenging official narratives. We keep reminding those in power that accountability matters." "And we hope it's enough," I added, raising my glass in a quiet toast to those whose courage had prevented a catastrophe. The soldiers who had fought their way home with critical intelligence, the officials who had chosen truth over career preservation, and the journalists sitting across from me who had followed a signal to its source, exposing a conspiracy that might otherwise have succeeded. They had won this round in the endless contest between security and vulnerability, transparency and secrecy, democratic values and authoritarian ambitions. But the game continued, evolving with each technological innovation and geopolitical shift. The signal had been restored for now. The question was whether we would recognize the next time it was lost.
Signal Lost is a production of Calaroga Shark Media. Executive producers Mark Francis and John McDermott. The assistance of AI was used in the production of this show.
Miami. Neon dreams. Dark desires. A killer stalks the streets, turning murder into macabre art. Introducing a new limited series podcast from Calaroga Shark Media. The Artist, A Killer's Canvas. This podcast is rated R, intended for mature audiences. The Artist, A Killer's Canvas. Available on all podcast apps now.